Subnautica, best known for being the second best game in which you crash land into an ocean filled with mutants and magic slugs, was a game that captured the minds and hearts of many. Subnautica Below Zero was a game that seemed to be similar in every way. So what happened? Why did these games get such a massively different reception from fans of the base building / die from dehydration simulator genre? Guess what, baby? Zero's back and ripping on another sequel again. Buckle up and hug your local sea monkey. This one might be a doozy. Let's get into it. First, let's dive into what made Subnautica so special. You get thrown face first into things, no long cutscenes or backstory, just a crash, a yeet, and a robot voice telling you to get your shit together. Kinda like my first week at college. Your oxygen is limited, so the world's a tough one to explore at first, giving you plenty of time to learn how to resource gather and improve your stuff and dip your toe into the beginnings of base building. The game's features ramp up the more you're able to interact with the world around you. There's plenty of story to be found, both through observation and how it directly relates to your escape. There's an intensive and intuitive base building system, lore for days, and aesthetics galore to get one's grubby little hands on. There's so much, and it's all so good. Seriously, I can't ramble on enough about how this game makes me happy. It's a perfect balance between an unintrusive story and just letting you do your own thing. Like, go ahead, friend, build your unnecessarily large mansion way too close to the giant monstrous fish, get murdered every 5 seconds. Yes, you do you. The plot is ready when you are. Right after you're done filling a few cabinets with items you don't know what to do with, but aren't quite daring enough to throw out, it's enthralling enough that escape is a character desire, maybe not necessarily a player one. But all good things must come to an end, and in time, all players intent on completing the game have to move the plot along and finish up what they came here to do and launch off. I ain't too proud to admit it, I cried when my time came. This game was an absolute masterpiece. If you haven't played it yet, go do it. But the importance here is that it's an amazing and emotional conclusion to an absolutely gorgeous game. One where you've gone from terrified lone survivor, barely able to leave your emergency pod, to seasoned ocean explorer, disease curer, and survivor? Yeah. And if you're following the typical trajectory of what people do when they finish up a game, you boot up the sequel. I can't speak for everyone's experience, but I know I found myself playing Subnautica Below Zero and finding excuses to put it down more and more often, but not really understanding why. Maybe I was burnt out on Subnautica? I mean, on the surface, it just seemed like more of the same of the game I loved, so why the heck did I feel like playing through it was such a chore? The sea monkeys truly were the only things that were bringing me joy, especially at the point in the game where they stopped borrowing my stuff. I mean, look at these little guys, could you be mad at this face? I had to sit on this one for a long time, pondering why I had such a bad taste in my mouth when I put Below Zero behind me, and I finally get it. I finished this game I couldn't stop gooming about, one where I ramped up power, knowledge, and touched everything I could, and for my second experience I was launched right into a kiddie pool. I think a great way to describe what I'm feeling is to compare the openings to the two games, which are remarkably similar but different in some key ways. To preempt, I'm not saying either way is necessarily bad, but I think it's important to see what might turn certain types of fans off of the series. Alright, let's start with Subnautica's opening.
Launch in 3, 2, 1.
Now Below Zero's opening.
This is the farthest that I can take you on company space bucks, Robin. You sure you want this? The research is in everything.
It is to me. And Sam. I need to know what happened.
The meteor storm.
I can use it for cover from Altera's eyes.
Gonna miss you, Robin.
I'll find my way back.
Approaching 45-46 feet. Surface temperatures. Drop pod deployed.
Putting these one after another, I noticed a much starker difference between the two. One was bare bones, it gave you just enough info if you were quick enough to notice it. You're going fast, you see the spaceship you departed from exploding, you see an item you're going to need in your first tutorial, and you see the metal that's gonna let you know that the ship and your skull are gonna need some repairs. You're told nothing explicitly, you're just thrown right to the action, with a bit more context after the use item tutorial, but not much. The second focuses much more on action shots, exposition, and attempting to create a sense of intrigue. You no longer have a silent protagonist, so you distinctly know that your character's motivations aren't necessarily your own. Robin has a purpose here and you're able to help her pursue it. This then brings me to comparing the establishing shots in the same vein, when you first see the environment that you're going to be playing in.
Welcome to 4546 feet. Enjoy your stay.
Again, Subnautica Below Zero plays like an action movie. Meteors in the sky, exciting music, even the protagonist saying, "Oh boy, I have to go do the next thing," with a quest marker telling you where to go. It keeps you moving and active to the next plot point.
Smokes. That did not go as planned. I should find a way into the water and get to the drop pod.
Meanwhile, let's compare it to our first look in 1. The music is quiet, your PDA is the only voice you hear, and the world is horrendously empty. We humans, creatures who generally like to stay where there's air, have nothing here. A broken ship in the distance and the occasional reef outcrop, but other than that, nothing. There's nowhere to go but down, and we can see for miles and miles and miles that we are truly and utterly alone. The map, even putting aside aesthetics, was much shallower than the original Subnautica game. Instead of giving the player as much room to explore and poke around, it's more densely packed with plot goods, bits and bobs. It's jarringly different and perhaps even disappointing for people who fell in love with the vastness of the original game. The next issue is, no duh, you start the game from scratch. By the time someone beats the first Subnautica, they've gathered a massive amount of resources and tools to let them dive, zoom around, and theoretically not die from thirst every 2.5 seconds. But here you're back to being a nobody. It's an all-new game, which means you have to rebuild everything from scratch. It's similar enough to not be samey to the last game, but different enough for your tasks to not feel easy and rote. So, if you just finished playing Subnautica, it feels dull and repetitive, and it's easy to lose motivation to keep going. The plot is much more active and in your face this game. As said before, the main character has a story, a mystery, and stories of the place around her to tune into. The plot's not waiting for you when you're done. You're actively ignoring the plot if you choose not to touch it. So with all that considered, here's a hard truth for me in this game. Subnautica Below Zero isn't bad. In fact, it's pretty good. It has most of the things Subnautica had, and everything I just listed as negatives might actually be a draw for some players. In fact, I'm sure there are all reasons why some people liked the game over the original one. But I have a theory as to why some, and by some I mean I always mean I, but when I say some, I sound much more professional. It's not like anyone can prove I'm the only one holding the opinions I do. We're so disappointed by the game. Are you ready? Here we go. Sequels to beloved games are terrible. Okay, hear me out. It's time for another patented Zero rant. So you have a game, and it's a very good game, really. It's excellent. It has the right balance of everything and wraps up with a neat little bow. On its own, it's a 10 out of 10 banger. And then the team goes, wow, this game did really well. Let's do another. Maybe like Below Zero was originally going to be a DLC for the main game, but the passion project got fiery and a full game was born out of it. But devs are at a struggle point here. They can't make it the same as the first game. No new improvements, no new features. They've surely gotten feedback in all directions by now. Shorter game, longer game, more plot, less plot, autosave, focus on building, focus on collectibles, more penguins. There are no detractors here, always more penguins. But there is a dedicated fan base of people who liked the first game, and no matter what changes are made in a direct sequel, a portion of that base will dislike those changes and leave. Concurrently, it's less likely that people will join a community based on a sequel than they would the first game in a franchise. So for the most part, if you're making a sequel to an amazing game, you're likely just narrowing your pre-existing audience with some exceptions. Conversely, making an amazing sequel to a mega game can cause popularity to skyrocket, the funniest example of this being Team Fortress 2. I don't even know what Team Fortress 1 looks like. Speaking of Valve, this is one of the reasons I think there's a struggle at Series' getting game number 3. At what point is it silly to keep narrowing an audience rather than attracting a new one? Portal did this, like the tight plot and no-frills physics. First game was great for that, not so much for the second, but the people who loved the lore and the humor, me included, thought it was amazing. Other games, Dead Space, Honey Pop, Zero Escape, if you know this series, we can be besties. The point is, a game can be absolutely awesome, but in the cases where it's typically played directly after its predecessor, in the cases in which it will always be compared to the other game sharing its title, well, if the first game was incredible, it's gonna look lackluster next to it. If Below Zero had come out all on its own, or I played it never knowing about Subnautica, I would have been all over it. I'd be talking it up the same way I did Subnautica earlier, but that's not what happened. It's a disappointment born of the developers suffering from success. My instinctive answer to this is just to avoid sequels. Game does well, make something new. That way direct comparisons are stopped and people can pick up what suits them. I actually hate that answer though. I love a good sequel, and I know most all of you do too. So then, what do we do? Truly, I don't know. Maybe at the end of the day, this is an observation of a pattern, a look at how we consume media, not something we can really help or do anything about. I know personally, tempering my own expectations is hard work, but I'm hopeful for what is to come, and I'm ready to be hurt by Bloodlines 2 developer announcements again. Thank you all for coming by. Please leave a like and subscribe if it was a vibe, it means a ton, and I will see you in development hell.
Motivational note. Craig McGill crash-landed in the acid swamps of Boreal 9, fought off arachnid kidney poachers, and hijacked a tame Star Wall. If he can do all that, you can survive one more day.